Thank you, everybody, for showing up on the Friday before spring break. So we've got a very dedicated crowd who braved all the strong wind and decided to join us for that Friday before spring break. And I also have three panelists, and Donta, who will be the moderator for this panel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Wee Youssef. I'm the co-chair of the Career Pathways Steering Committee. I'm also an associate professor in the School of Public Service. This is the first Career Pathways event that we're running for the semester, so keep an eye out for March 23rd, which will be the second Career Pathways event that we're also hosting. So for those of you who are thinking about the job market, our March 23rd event will be about the academic job market and really thinking about what are the teaching components of the academic job market and what kind of teaching documents and teaching information to consider as part of your application packet. So put that on your calendars. I look forward to seeing all of you on March 23rd. I'm going to let Donta run the panel for today, but we also have participants via WebEx, so periodically Eric will kind of signal to Donta that we might have questions from the online audience, so we also want to make sure that we address some of the concerns or questions that they may have. So thank you again, everybody, and looking forward to a great panel.
Cool. Awesome. So we'll get started. So do we want to start with introductions? I guess we'll start with Debbie.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Debbie Major. I'm eminent scholar and professor in the Department of Psychology, and as of January, I'm also the Associate Dean in the College of Sciences. And I've been here at ODU a very long time. Still my first job right after graduate school.
My name's Jane Roitsch. I'm an adjunct instructor right now in communication sciences and disorders. I am a doctoral student in special education, and I just finished my oral and written comps, so here comes the big D.
Awesome. I'm Donta Council. I'm a second-year doctoral student in the School of Public Service, and I will be your moderator today.
My name is Randy Myers. I'm an associate professor in sociology and criminal justice, and I've been here 6 years.
Awesome, awesome. So we'll dig right into questions because we have lots of them. So just starting off and discussing the home stretch, how do you deal with the fog of once you finish comps and you're now talking about dissertation topics and just even kind of navigating that process, because it's a bit foggy. It's not as clear. It's not the structure. You go to class every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and you know where to turn in assignments. It's more so very gloomy. How do you deal with that?
Okay, so I'll start with this. I think waiting until after your comprehensive exams is too late to be thinking about your dissertation. So you're in graduate school, you're taking courses, maybe you have to do a master's thesis, but hopefully what's happening is you're developing some passions in your field and you're developing some expertise. And you definitely want to build on those things as you move toward the dissertation, because that's really how I think I describe the dissertation process, as balancing your passions with the practicalities of you really have to get it done. So I think what can happen if you haven't given a lot of thought to your dissertation before you go through the candidacy exam process is you get through that process and it's such a relief and it's been so challenging that you just want to say and take a break, whether it's physical or mental. Some people go off and do an internship at that point. I think all of those things delay progress. And I've seen people delay their progress a lot by not maintaining the momentum. So that would be my sort of preemptive advice.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say something similar, and it's so hard because it's so discipline specific, like the way that dissertations develop. But if at all possible, I encourage folks to just kind of start working on at least the topic area that they're going to write their dissertation on, like right away. That's how it worked out for me, especially if you're going to collect your own data and you need approvals and access and all that stuff. Like, if at all possible, you want to start that, first, second year sort of thing. I don't believe I've chaired 4 dissertations to completion, and I always say, like, there's no reason why we can't start working on your dissertation right now. We're not putting it into a proposal, but like, if you have a sense for what you want to study for the next 5 years, like, let's start the day you walk in. And now I know it doesn't always, people change their interests, and maybe you do have to kind of reset after the comps exams, but if at all possible, I would encourage folks just to at least start writing and thinking about their topic area as early as humanly possible. And that's not very helpful if you've had to shift gears. But and it's going to depend on your advisor and if they're cool with that and all that stuff too. But the earlier you can start, the better. And then, I guess it's sort of dealing with the fog and that little bit less structure after the comprehensive exams. It's just important to reach out and keep talking to folks, and it might feel lonely in grad school, but it gets even lonelier when you're faculty. So, rely on trading papers with other people and talking and developing ideas, and don't forget that human interaction is important and can give you some energy when you feel a little bit sluggish.
So I just wrote down a couple things. The big thing that I found helpful for me about the fog was I did a pilot study, and being able to get that data information back, right, was really helpful, and it really cemented, as Debbie said, it really cemented my passion for what I'm looking at, for what my topic is. So I actually will be able to use that pilot data to support, thank goodness there was significance in the data, but to support my dissertation topic. And I think that was something that really helped make things practical and functional. And you also, as we all know, as doctoral students, are encouraged to publish and present. And doing a pilot study really helped me get quite a few things out there into the world that helped me be able to present. And then it's almost like Debbie mentioned a couple times with the momentum. You want that momentum to keep going. And now, from my pilot and also from even my literature review I've kind of structured it so I have to keep going. I have conferences coming up where I have to present things that are going to be related to my dissertation. The other nice thing about having a pilot is if you continue that study for your dissertation, your IRB is already, that portion of it is usually approved, and it just requires some tweaking usually, but your foot is in the door. Because the IRB process, for those of you who haven't done it, is it's not a hard one, but can be a long one. I think you'd agree with that, especially when you're dealing with human subjects and all the things you have to do. And then just kind of dovetailing on what Randy said, in terms of isolation, I wouldn't necessarily say isolation is a bad thing sometimes. For me personally, yes, the exhale of I got through oral and written comps and I don't have to take classes. There's that exhale moment, but being isolated isn't necessarily something that is can be bad. You can get a lot of things done when you have the confidence in your head to say, hey, you know what, I am going to be an expert on this topic. I'm going to be able to synthesize this information. Let me just be with my thoughts for a minute. And then I think that can be helpful. So don't fear that lack of, I'll see you every Tuesday, Thursday, 4:20 to 7 or whatever. It's without that, you've got a little bit more space to think. And I think that is a good way to interpret it as opposed to being alone. That's how I have it in my head right now.
One of the things I miss about grad school is having that time to be reflective and to think a little bit more. And it can be isolating, but you also have the freedom to work on one thing for 3 or 4 years, and you don't get that once you're done.
So I'm hearing about developing interests, developing passions. Could you all talk about how you develop your respective topics for dissertation? And so what's that? So you talked about conferencing and developing topics beforehand. Is it working with an advisor, and do you fall under their own philosophy? Do you branch off and find your own subset of a discipline or an area? How did you all develop your own topic areas? Now, we can start with Randy. We can start with Jay.
Oh, start with me. Hey,
start with Jay.
I'm thirsty. Okay. So for me, it was a dovetailing of both. It was finding someone who supported my thoughts, but also brought her own into it as well. So my dissertation chair is And the folks on my committee, they are very involved in cognitive processes and thinking. And I'm interested in admissions criteria for graduate programs. So they're bringing kind of the cognitive component, which is what their focus is, and I'm bringing a clinical component, and we're kind of melding them together. So initially I went in thinking, because I teach several undergraduate courses here, and went into it thinking, how can I help prepare or screen or assess aspiring graduate clinicians so that it's a square peg in a square hole versus anything else. So in answer to your question, it was more of I had a gut feeling about what I could, that's the other thing, could continue to research on and not get bored with and really be passionate about for as long as it takes, right? That I had a feeling what I would be passionate about, but I don't know everything, obviously, so I wanted to combine it with people who did know everything in their field, and I think that was a nice marriage, or I hope it will be. It was for the pilot, so I'm thinking it'll be good for the big one.
Nice. Good.
So I've seen a lot of students develop their dissertation topics, and one of the things that I recall from being in graduate school was that I felt constrained. Like I felt constrained to my advisor's interests, and told myself, when I'm a faculty member, I'm going to let my students do whatever they want for their dissertation. Well, I found out why there's a constraint. You really can't be a good advisor to your doctoral student if they're not pursuing a topic that is in your domain of expertise. It really puts them at a disadvantage and sort of out there on their own. So I really like the idea of collaborating with your dissertation advisor to figure out a topic that's doable and that takes advantage of that person's background, because that can be a tremendous help to you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to jump into that question.
Uh-huh.
So, I already knew what I wanted to do my thesis since I was like a junior.
Okay.
I already know the topic, new topic, I knew what I wanted to do. The problem is like my advisor did research in this topic. She doesn't do the research anymore. Right now, my POC is in Czech Republic, and he's not very responsive. How do I go with it? And then, that's one question. Question number 2. Do you recommend to actually understand the theory? My dissertation is in physics and engineering. So do you understand the theory, like the hard science first, or and it's computational, or should I just start jumping into the code? And if I have to go back and refresh theory while I'm trying to understand the code, I'll do that.
Those are some good questions. So it sounds like you have an advisor who is in the area and now is not so active, but you've got someone in another country who's expert but not necessarily responsive. Are they a formal member of your committee?
Well, my advisor, who's to know to you, yes.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. He's a researcher on lab in Czech Republic, which actually does what I want to do.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that makes people a little more responsive is to have a formal role. And so we do have a process here at ODU for getting people outside the university approved to be a member of your dissertation committee. So that might be,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that might be a route.
But I'm only doing a master, though.
Okay, well, for your thesis committee, yeah,
Okay.
the same would apply. The theory versus like jumping into the code and application, that might be discipline specific. I think for my discipline, it would be really important to have a solid basis in the theory and be operating from there. Otherwise, I think that just gives you a harder path with your committee to be convincing about the merit of the research you want to do.
Yeah, so we were talking about choosing your dissertation topics. How did you choose yours?
Mine was qualitative interviews with young women in trouble with the law. And I always wanted to talk to young kids who got in trouble with the law. And I didn't think I'd get the chance to do it, but because I started early enough and like identified it in the first year. My IRB process was like 3 years, so if I hadn't done it like when I walked in the door, like I would have never done that for a dissertation. So I got very lucky with that. But what I would say is, study what you're passionate about, because man, we don't make enough money to not do what we're passionate about, and you're not going to see it through, and you're not going to do your best work if you don't study exactly what excites you. And I often hear students talk about how they can be more strategic for the job market, and for a little bit of that is okay, but man, if you're not, if it doesn't excite you, you're not going to do your best work. At least that's how I operate. So I always err on the side of passion versus strategy. I'm also in a field where the job market is very good too, so take that into account. Yeah, that's what I would say.
So, a question for the faculty: what do you do when you have a student that has gone through coursework, they've gone through the comprehensive exam, but they have not settled on a topic, and because they haven't settled, they're lagging out. Do you encourage them to set a hard date to figure out the topic, or do you tell them that maybe this is time to throw in the towel and they just stick with ABD status? How does that work when a student just cannot figure out a topic area at all? Or is that something that you find?
I haven't come across it yet, but
I haven't found that the struggle is coming up with a topic. Mm-hmm. It's almost the opposite end. It's like there are too many ideas, or the ideas are too big. Like you'll be here 10 years trying to do all of that research. Like it's a career program of study rather than like the first study. But to the issue of like setting deadlines and things in general, I think it's very helpful to engage in some goal setting around the dissertation and for specific pieces of the dissertation. Because unlike coursework, it doesn't have its own built-in accountability or timeline. So you've got to have something, that you create for yourself. So you've got some goals to hit, some targets.
And so you recommend having a timeline?
I do.
Okay.
I do, because I would call it, breaking down your goal of completing the dissertation into much more immediate, manageable goals, because that's kind of overwhelming. Complete your dissertation. Well, there are a lot of steps involved. We've talked about IRB. You've got different sections like the lit review introduction, the method, the data collection. So I think setting some goals with regard to that is really helpful. Yeah.
So Jane, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Since you're going through dissertation now, do you have a timeline? Do you have a?
I do. I have things. This is crazy. This works for me. I set things by holidays. So it just works.
Yeah,
that's how I remember. I'm like, okay, spring. So spring break, I told my committee that I would have my prospectus to them by the end of spring break. Because next week, I have several days to compile all the lit reviews and the 3 chapters that Debbie just spoke of. So the answer is yes, and it makes it a little bit more my own when I do that. And I did that for everything with my oral comps and my written comps too. Like Christmas, I'm going to do it, right? And then New Year's, I'm going to do other stuff. So it helps me, so yes. And I'm very, I'm a list checker, so it helps me to check things. And I like looking back and also knowing, hopefully what my next plan is. Because my goalpost is to graduate by winter of 18 this year. So with that, as she said, if you don't incrementalize, like Debbie said, I think your brain would explode. Because if I think about all those things, right now I start to itch and twitch and be like, I can't even stay here, you guys have to get going, right? But knowing that, okay, I've got this, and it's really one foot in front of the other, which is I think what both Randy and Debbie were saying, where it's just that momentum, just keep going, because if you stop, then you kind of forget, and you know that when you write, and you write more, and then you want to add to it. So it works for me to definitely have a timeline.
I've seen folks who, go ahead. No.
I just wanted to build on the point that Jane made. I think for me, it's also really important that deadline comes from the student. And I have my students say, well, tell me when you want this done. But I don't know what the student is juggling. I don't know how well they work under certain types of pressure. So for me, I prefer to have my students, and I'll work collaboratively with them to set realistic goals, but I find that when I'm the one that sets those goals, we tend to revisit them, and revisit them, and revisit them. So I think it's much better when my students are the ones that tell me, okay, I have this big block in April that I can just work, and I can get it to you by the 1st of May. Hey, perfect. Rather than my saying, I want to see it in mid-April. So I think for me that really works on kind of on the faculty side. Sorry, Randy.
No, you're fine. It sounds really corny, but one of the things that's helped a couple of my students to not feel so overwhelmed is to actually just set up the document, like the dissertation document, with the table of contents. And, it probably, like when you're working on the proposal stage, you can even kind of start it then if your advisor's okay with it. But then you feel like you're making progress because it's not just notes and ideas, it's stuff that's going into the dissertation. And when you're working on your proposal, I mean, it's going to feed into your dissertation and just, be kind of, in my field, usually just the front end of your dissertation. And so just like putting your stuff into that formal dissertation format, I think can make a lot of people feel a little bit better. And then you feel like you're doing something. You're not just taking notes. You're getting stuff down. Because I've had students where they're coming up with ideas and they're writing it, but it's in a notebook or it's in these different computer files. And start putting that to use. Yeah.
And not to harp on the pilot study, but having to write your pilot, like your summary section and your proposal and your purpose and why is this important. That really helped me synthesize a lot, and I'm going to be using a lot of that for my introduction.
Yeah. And you can see the pages stack up too, and that makes you feel good because oh my gosh, I got 40 pages down. That's
right.
A third of the thing, and you didn't even know it. And when it's in that, for some people, it might be helpful. When it's in that dissertation format, you're working on it.
Okay.
Is there a special dissertation format for ODU, or you can just make your own?
We have a style editor at the college level. I know that.
There's a graduate school template
Okay.
that's on the graduate school website for the ETD.
I should know that.
And so, were there any questions so far? Not yet. Okay, sounds good. So, moving towards talking more so about the formality of the dissertation committee. And so, Debbie, you talked a little bit about, and Jane talked a little bit about aligning your interests with your faculty members. What advice do you have on choosing committees, particularly the chairs, since they're going to navigate and guide and advocate for you during their process? What type of advice do you give to us as doctoral students in forming that committee? Or Jane?
Okay, so
what did you do?
Yeah, what did I do?
No.
So in all through my coursework, I had feelings of folks that had specialization in certain areas and that I worked well with. I think that's huge. Mm-hmm. And that I also felt like, back on Debbie's point, to have someone that would let me spread my wings a bit without tempering me into one area that they were most focused on or most comfortable with. So I kept my eyes open for people who would meet me in the middle with that. And as I took classes, I thought, okay, that instructor, that professor would be interesting, but this isn't really somebody who knows what I'm looking for. So in terms of my dissertation committee, I actually just had them sign the paperwork a couple of Fridays ago, so yay. Right? Timely? Yeah, that's a big, I took a picture of it, it's up on the fridge for yay. But I actually chose my chair based on the fact of how much she knows of what I know, because I don't want to have to teach her. I mean that in a nice way, but I don't want to have to explain things. I want instead for her to help me think about the process. She knows the theory, which is great. She doesn't know as much in other areas that have to do with like executive function, which is the big thing that I'm looking at. So I'm on my committee as a person who knows very much about executive function. Additionally, the two other folks on my committee happen to be, one's another speech pathologist like myself who's in our program, and then the other person has just seen so many dissertations. I just feel like he's just going to be able. He's one of those people who can kind of cut down everything. When you feel like there's trees everywhere, he just kind of hones in, and he's just really good at that. So I tried to, again, I feel like I can work with all of them if I have to for the full 8 years in which I'm allotted, which it won't be 8 years, but that was another thing that was important. So I'm rambling.
No, you're good. I don't know, man. I don't know if this is good. It's hard because you want like a range of perspectives, but then I remember my advisor also saying like, we don't want anybody to kind of get in our way. You know what I mean? And so it's a balance of different viewpoints and adding different dimensions, but then you also want people who are going to be supportive of your vision and your methods and what you're going to do with it. And so it's hard. I guess you just have to find a chair that you get along with personally and professionally, and hopefully has expertise in your exact area, and then work with them to identify I don't know, man. It's so hard. It's so hard, and we don't. And many of our departments our departments can be quite small, So like in my department, we're big, but our PhD's in criminology, so we have probably 10 criminologists. It's not a tremendous amount of folks, and I don't know. I'm glad I'm past that point.
But I think it's important to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you choose.
Yes.
After you get through your orals and your writtens, you're driving the bus to a certain extent, where you can decide who you want to be, within the scope of the department, obviously. But I've had some other, some colleagues I know, not necessarily from the speech department or the special ed department, who really feel obligated to have their professors who taught them on their committee. When in reality, I look and I think, wow, they didn't really meld in class. I don't know if you've experienced anything like that, where people feel pressured to have someone when they really aren't a good fit.
Yeah. I don't think any faculty would be hurt if you don't select them or anything like that. Don't worry about that.
But I think a lot of folks do, because they still feel like they've been under the guise of being the student forever, and now it's like, I'm doing this for me, really for me. Go ahead, do it for you. Pick somebody. And like you said, I think they faculty may be relieved that they're not on a committee sometimes. So, yeah.
Not us.
No, not you. Present company excluded, of course. So, I think he had a question.
Yeah. Question.
I think another question, but I'm a PhD candidate in engineering management and systems engineering. So in our field, it's kind of similar, but we have some addition on what you're saying, because you're saying you have an expertise, your advisor has an expertise, as being a research center. When I first joined in PhD in 2013, the research center and our department had a list of what is being working here and trying to get grants, grant writing and things. So there's already some trains going, and if you like one of the vehicles, you can just jump in if it also overlaps with your passions. So that's what I see in my department. Mm-hmm. So there's already everybody's competing, trying to get grants and things like awards. So there's already subjects being researched, and it's like I see a continuum of the research in my department. Like I'm graduating next year, let's say, or this year. Some of the future recommendations in my thesis probably get feedback into a new student. That's how we try to, continue the wheel going. Mm-hmm. So that's a different addition.
Yeah, it's so discipline specific.
Yeah,
that's how we do it.
Yeah. Mm.
But I do want to ask students to really think about, yes, the dissertation is a critical part of getting through the program, right? But part of the reason why we want you here in the Career Pathways program is to also think about life post-dissertation and life post-grad school. And so I think also you want to have a good working relationship with your dissertation chair, your dissertation committee, because when, for example, you go on the job market, search committees might want to talk to your advisor to know what progress you're making on your dissertation, for example. So you also want to make sure that the people that you put on those committees will likely be people that search committees will contact for updates or for references, and you want to make sure that these are the people who will speak highly of you and can give an accurate assessment of progress that you're making in your dissertation, for example, of how well of a fit you would be for a different organization. So I think that also kind of factors into it as well. I had a pretty big committee when I was working on my PhD way back when.
How many?
I had 7. I know, and partly because I was doing things in my department that I needed outside experts. So one of the struggles was basically that.
I'm literally not working in my department at all.
So, but for me, I also brought in somebody, and from the beginning, he and I worked really well together, and there was a very specific role for him. His role was to be my yes man. To just keep propping me up, because periodically my committee would get a little contentious, and he would just be like, keep trucking along, you're doing fine. So sometimes you also need somebody who's going to help be that cheerleader as you progress too. Because when you work on a dissertation, we would like to say that it's smooth sailing, but sometimes things don't always head out the way that they do. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was very important. My chair played a similar role, and it was always sort of us against the world. In a very nice way.
Yeah.
But like, we're going to get this done. And, we're not going to let anybody tell us what, we'll take their advice. But, and, that can be an effective way to mentor. Yeah.
Good question. In regards to community, like how useful is to have a community with different backgrounds? I personally like to work with many different people that I can. Like, as an engineer, if I can work with somebody who knows, I don't know, English, for example, because I cannot write crap, by all means, I'll just hire. That's how I think. So how, I guess, what are the pros or cons of having a very diverse community, in a sense? So working with the physics department, the electrical engineering department, the mechanical department, with all over the place that you can.
Well, you want people on your committee that can make a contribution. So I think if you're clear about the contribution that you want different members to make, it could be workable. But the last thing you want is a diverse group that doesn't see the common vision. I think that's the big challenge when you've got the diverse group. It will impede your progress if not everyone can get on the same page with what it is you're trying to accomplish. So that's how I would approach that, I think.
And also, when it comes time to go on the job market, too, it might be helpful to have people from your discipline if you're going for an academic job, because places where you're going to apply, they might know those folks a little bit better.
In regards of job market, how useful is to have like working experience?
Like teaching in the classroom sort of thing? Or
No, like actually like industry experience while you're at it. Does that help at all?
I think that's discipline specific, and I'm sorry, I know that's...
No, that's fine.
But I can say for me, I'm looking at clinicians, and I was a clinician, still am, have been, 20 years. So I feel like I get it. I wouldn't feel comfortable assessing clinical abilities had I not been a clinician. So I think it depends on what you're looking at. I just ended with a preposition. on what you're looking. Can you tell I just did my written comms?
Are you looking to go past the master's to the PhD level?
Oh yeah.
Okay, and so are you looking to go into academia?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate industry.
Okay. And so are you referring to the experience in engineering to prepare you for the world of academia?
And how useful is that? Does it really worth it working 40 hours? Or should I just stop working and just focus on my master's? That's my point.
That's for your folks in your department. I don't know the feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
For us, academic social sciences, it wouldn't. Field experience wouldn't matter. Most likely.
And just jumping back onto the dissertation committee topic really quick. So as a doctoral student, you kind of hear both spectrums of the experience. So you hear the good experiences with the great cheerleader and the chair that's the yes man and the subject expert. And then you actually get into your own respective departments, and you see the department politics sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And you see that there are certain faculty members, not mine, disclosure, that don't get along, but more so just kind of, you hear from other students that are going through the process that they would like to have a chair, but this chair doesn't necessarily get along with someone in the department, and so it's hard for them to form the committee. And so sometimes that's a hindrance into their progress, right? What advice would you give to students that are faced with that type of challenge where they're trying to pick the committee members, but the committee members ideally don't get along? And so it's kind of hard. So they may have to choose someone that's not necessarily an expert, but someone to just fill the position.
Yeah, so I think the most important position on the committee is the chair. And so if you're in a position where you need to be sensitive to some kind of interpersonal dynamics or departmental politics, I would prioritize the chair and then make the other decisions once that decision is made. And you know, faculty members are human beings too. They all have their quirks and issues. But I do think that in some departments, like faculty members may have a reputation for being a difficult committee member. Well, your dissertation is stressful enough. I probably would not choose the difficult committee member.
That's good advice.
Yeah, and I mean, and it may not be difficult. It may be unresponsive. You know, this can't ever schedule a meeting, can't ever get an email answered from this person. And I think all of those are legitimate criteria to consider. After all, you're trying to make progress, you're trying to make it on a timeline. And certainly other students in the department know. So they're a good source of advice about committee composition.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah.
Right on. Okay.
No, I was just going to say not in the department where I am, but in some of the other, I think it was one of the other PFF things I was involved when I was talking to somebody who still is ABD, because he was saying that his, it was just like celebrity deathmatch between like the people he had on his committee or he was planning to have on his committee, and this person didn't want to work with that person, and he didn't believe in this theory, and this person was more this based, and oh no, we can't do that. And he just finally went, you know what, I'll just keep teaching, and I'm 8 years post ABD. And it was kind of tragic to hear that, because I thought, oh, your momentum did kind of stop, you know, and it's too bad. Sorry to end on a sad note.
No, it's okay.
So sad.
So, Dr.
I think we have questions.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
along those lines, I actually developed my committee along with my committee chair, and we actually sat down and went over who I should ask to fill out the committee to avoid many of those problems.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I do have a suggestion. When you do decide on your committee, and this is just me being old school, but it made me feel better about it. I asked each person specifically. Like, I don't know if you did, but I went into their office. Can I make an appointment? Can I sit down and touch base with you? Because I wanted them to have the option, not via email, but to look me and me look at them and go, I really think this would be a good fit, right? If you were on my committee, as opposed to, oh yeah, will you? You know, and I got to know that person that way. So I think going in and having that face-to-face was almost like I felt a little bit more respectful of the process, as opposed to just assuming that they would say yes if I emailed them. Because I do know some folks who email, will you be on my committee? And I just thought, if a student emailed me that, I'd probably say, well, you didn't even make the effort to come by and tell me. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but as professors,
probably
I don't
stop
know.
by. Yeah.
I don't mind the email, honestly, especially if it's from a student I know and they want to email me their concept and tell me what their timeline is. Those are the kinds of things that are important to me. If it's not obvious to me why they'd be asking me, I would ask them. I mean, I don't advise having people on your committee that you don't know or have some kind of familiarity with. So I would be very surprised to get an email or to be asked for an appointment by a student that I've never had any kind of interaction with.
You can also have your chair feel stuff out too. You know, I know I've gone that route as well.
Yeah, I think getting advice from your chair about the committee composition is really important. They want you to finish also.
And so throughout your dissertation processes, did you have any changes to your committees? Were there people that had fallen off or that were added on at some point?
I didn't have that, but I did something that I don't advise doing. I had co-chairs. So I had 2 people as the main advisors. And you can imagine all the challenges that would and did bring. And I made that decision at the time because I had been working with both of them long term on a grant project. And it was the more, I didn't want to feel bad by picking one over the other, but I definitely could have, because there was one who I knew was more, disciplined in how they worked and would help me get finished faster. So yeah, I liked your advice about, it's for you, and make the best decision for you, and don't worry so much about.
Which is hard because you've been, I won't say groveling, but we've been groveling to these people forever. So to not, to do something for yourself, to advocate for yourself is sometimes a quarter turn.
Yeah. What about you?
I didn't have any changes to my committee. I guess I was lucky in that regard.
Were you changed?
What's that?
Were you changed in your committee?
Was
By
I?
other students?
Have you been changed?
Oh, have I
No.
been changed out? No. No.
Like they said, okay, I'm not continuing with you anymore.
Have they kicked
Yeah,
me
I'll
out?
go. How does it feel? That's my concern.
No, not yet. No.
That's the key word right there.
So I will say that I have been dropped from a committee, and to be perfectly honest, I think faculty want to work with students, but we also recognize that students' interests change. So I tell my students all the time, it's not going to hurt my feelings, right? You might, again, and we start early in our program with, you have an advising committee. And it makes sense if you want to do transportation policy or urban policy to have me as on your advising committee, but if you want to do social policy or anything else, it's like, I'm really not going to be able to give you very good advice. So take me off. I think I speak for most faculty when you say it's not going to hurt our feelings. It actually gives us more time to do other stuff. And then we have a lot of stuff that we have to do.
Yeah. Okay, that works well too. Okay. Were there any questions online, Eric? No, not yet. Okay. Where was I at? Could you all talk about when you were in the process of doing dissertation and applying to the job market? What does that look like as far as the ideal time to start looking at the academic job market, or for those who may want to go into industry, and the influence that maybe your committee had over that process also?
I don't know anything about industry, but with the academic job market, of course, you got to have your materials all set by basically end of August, at least in my field. All the jobs start coming up in August, and application deadline September 5th, 15th, October 1, yada, yada, yada. And what I tell folks is, you don't believe me, I've done this every time, you don't believe me, but in that fall when you're applying to jobs, you're not going to be very productive with your writing. I know you work hard. I know you write it, but your head is going to be somewhere else. You're going to be thinking about that application you threw out to your dream school, or the phone interview that you have. It's going to stop, or it's going to slow down in the fall. So you got to get a good chunk of your dissertation done before the job market hits, and then you can finish it up in the spring, hopefully. But at least for folks on the academic job market, everybody slows down in that fall semester of their last year. So just be aware of that and try to prepare accordingly. It will happen to you, I promise. Happened to me, happens to everybody. Because your head's somewhere else. You're thinking about moving, you're thinking about your new life, you're thinking about, we're human beings, man, and you're not going to be able to work on your work as much as you think you are. So, yeah.
So, but in your program, thinking about the succession of completing coursework and comps and dissertation, when you got into that fall semester, were you already a year in, a few months into the dissertation process?
I started working on mine like my second year, so at that point I'd been working on it for like 3 years, just tapping on it, and again, like we started to start as early as you can, so that You feel, and you also feel confident going on a job interview if you've got big chunks written and you've got some arguments in place and you've got some chapters that are rounding into shape, because the job market will distract you. Yeah. It's exciting, it's great, but it will distract you too.
So, I mean, in addition to the job market taking your focus and attention, it takes real time. Like applying for jobs is like a part-time job itself. So I think that's a very real thing that Randy's talking about. I have to say, I think in most disciplines, the further along you are in your dissertation when you go on the market, the more attractive candidate you are. I think it's very hard to get looked at if you don't have data in hand, at least. If you're at the very beginning stages of your dissertation, it's just not going to put you very high up in terms of a university's assessment, because they need someone who has their degree by the time they start the following year. So they're, unless you're completely done, which is even better, they're hedging a bet. Are you going to be able to finish by the time we need you to start that following fall?
And so by the time that you were applying to jobs, you were already a year in or a few months into the dissertation process?
I think I was at least 6 months in and collecting data when I was applying. And so by the time I got invited on interviews, I had analyzed data and could present that work as part of my job talk.
So you may not have written up results and discussion, but you had the data.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay. Chapters 4 and 5 TBD.
Yeah, anything to help build the confidence that it's really happening, because things do happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You come in talking about a side project or
What about you, Jane? You're writing and potentially looking into the job market. Mm-hmm. So what does it look like for you right now?
Well, I'm not even thinking about the job market yet. I'm really not. I mean, I want to get through my dissertation. I want to get to the point, just like Debbie had said, to have something to show for the efforts that I've made. And if I'm at the point where I feel like I have something to speak to that is at a dissertation level, then I'll start. But I don't want to veer off course, and that I don't mean that in a bad way, but I want to get this. I want to get through this. I want to see this through. And there may be some sacrifices I have to make along the way to do that, but I got to keep the end in sight. Otherwise, I think, just like Randy and Debbie had said, I think you can get, we said side projects. I mean, holy shnikey, how many hey, help me on this grant. Hey, you did this, you want to do that. And I'm like, I have to do a little tunnel vision right now, and I have to be a little selfish with my time, because if I'm not, this is me personally, because if I'm not, I will feel obligated, and I don't want to feel obligated. I need to be obligated to me and the effort that I've put in at this point. Otherwise, I feel like all these little ancillary things are just going to draw out something that I want to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it feels weird to be selfish like that, but I think he has a question.
Yeah.
Question. So I'm at the point of applying for jobs, and one of the things that I've been struggling with is where to align my research post dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
Do I try? Think I need to separate sort of myself from my advisor a little bit. Also, what I'm doing is very interdisciplinary. So where do I want to fall as far as the very specific things, and how do I align the research that I'm interested in doing with what the job application is calling for?
Really quick, what's your area and your topic?
It's biomedical engineering.
Okay. I'm not the expert. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Just curious.
And BME has a lot of places you can go. I mean, wow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is that there's so many different ways to go that I might not necessarily be qualified for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's very broad.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's tough to speak
Yeah,
to, isn't
you
it?
just don't know, because you don't know how some job search committees are going to be mandated or feel like they have to stick right to the ad.
Yeah.
Others are going to play it a little more fast and loose. Another hiring committee might totally change the direction of what they want. You just don't, man, you just don't know. Like, I always err on the side of just applying broadly because you don't know how you're going to be interpreted. You don't know the departmental politics and the state mandates at all these different places. Fire it out there, and I wouldn't change yourself a whole lot. You can tailor it a little bit to the ad, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't, tailor the letter too much and just see what happens, man. Seeing it from both sides now, like, I actually feel a lot less. If I apply for a job and if I don't get it, like, I wouldn't feel all that bad about it because it's a very subjective process, even with every objective measure in place, and you don't know how you're going to be looked at, and you can't tell by the job ad necessarily either.
And I think departments are. I don't just from watching things in other departments are very dynamic, right? Like the ad that they put out today, there may be a whole different department. 2 people may have left.
Yeah.
Another person may have gotten promoted or something, and there may have been, other opportunities in other places. So what you see that they wrote up may be pretty generic for them too, right? Or it may not. It may be a point in time as opposed to it's different when they actually get your CV. I don't know.
I think about the process as a mutual fit process. So they're checking out candidates to see who's going to fit evolving departmental needs. Candidates are seeing if they're a good fit for what the department has to offer. So I don't think you want to do tailoring that's really outside your true interests or outside your true expertise. If your interests are broad, for instance, and you want to emphasize one aspect of that interest that seems like a good fit for a particular position, I think that kind of thing is fine. Because if you get to the interview stage, it gives you an opportunity to see if they're open to your broader interests as well. But I don't know. I feel like applying takes so much time. If you're looking at a position and you're just like, I wouldn't even want that position.
Yeah.
Like, don't apply. I mean, don't waste your time.
I know that we talked a little bit about when choosing your committee for the formality of just having a committee that's going to guide the dissertation process. How influential was the committee during your job search process? And so did you find that faculty prestige was influential? Did you find that their social capital or networks were influential? What did it look like for you all?
I think it matters a lot. It doesn't have to be prestigious, but like that sort of capital matters. And, if somebody knows somebody, they're more like, it's probably the way it works. And I don't know. Prestige can help too, but but again, that's so out of your control. Like as a student or somebody applying, you can't even almost think about that stuff. But it doesn't hurt to talk to folks on your committee and, hey, do you know somebody here at this place that I really want? Make a call for me, and maybe they're, I don't know if that's,
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think in academia, there really is a kind of pedigree effect that happens that, you went to a certain, you're coming from a certain program, or you're working with a certain person who's really well known in the field. I think that can help you to a point. Like, it might get your application looked at more seriously. It might get you on the short list for a phone interview. I don't think it ultimately gets you the job. I think you and the merit of your own work are ultimately what gets you the job. You want your references to know you well and to be able to speak to your expertise and the progress that you've made, and to be able to explain in detail why you'd be a great candidate. Oftentimes, that's people from your committee. It's for sure your dissertation chair. So they can be very important in the process.
Donta, let me just, I do want to add, they're not going to get you the job. But I think it could prevent you from making it to the next level. So, for example, my area of expertise is public budgeting and finance. Right? So I do a lot of work in public budgeting and finance. And I've actually had not a student who was looking for a position in the area of public budgeting and finance, but was not working with me and was not listing me as a reference, and was unsuccessful. And after the fact, I had a few other faculty at other institutions come up to me and say, hey, we saw that ODU had a student who was applying to our public budgeting and finance position, but there was no endorsement, but there was no connection to the public finance people we know are ODU. And so it's kind of like we weren't sure, there was just no indication that this was a credible public budgeting and finance candidate. So the student just didn't make it to the next level. So I think there is that, but just saying, well, I work with we is not going to get you the job.
No.
But on the other hand, not using your faculty's name,
Right.
it might prevent you from making it to the next level.
I mean, networking is important for like any career field, and same in academia. So, I mean, your own faculty and people that you can rely on your campus, but I think as a student going to conferences and presenting your work, you're building your reputation and creating your network. And it's great if you can submit an application for a position where people can say, oh, I saw her presenting at this last conference. I'm familiar with the kind of work she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to add to that. I came back from my department chair encouraged me, and she's also the dissertation chair. My dissertation chair encouraged me to go to a conference that was a little outside of my, it's like comfort zone, but my realm. It was a neurological society meeting, and I did a poster there. But that networking portion of the program and just being able to look at other people's presentations, names. I mean, the names. I saw the names that were on the labels, right, of all the lit reviews that I'd done. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's that guy. You kind of get a little starstruck. But that is important, I think, because it gets your name out there. But it also kind of rekindled, at least it did for me, my desire to keep going. And that was, I want to be like that. And I think conferences are really important from a networking standpoint and just from like a personal, wow, okay, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been to a couple, haven't you, Dr.? Yeah, how did you feel? I mean...
So Dr. Yusuf is great for being a cheerleader and encouraging us to go out and network. And I would say that conferencing, if you don't have social skills, you definitely have to get used to having them, because a lot of the conferencing is you sit in the sessions and you do learn a lot of information, but a lot of the time it's when you have dinner and you have the happy hour and all the social time where you get to know one another. And so a lot of people end up talking to people. At least me, I was a baby. I was kind of naive in my first conference, and so I was talking to kind of big wigs in our field that I didn't even know. I was just talking. And then they would say, oh, well, I'm Savar, and he's big in ethics in our field. I'm like, oh, that's the guy that wrote the book for our class. Okay, okay. But, and then he mentioned that he knew some of my professors back in graduate school. And so to me, I think that kind of helps to plant small seeds. Because I realized, too, traveling from state to state, in academia, it's really small. The world is like extremely small. And so that impression that you do make in networking with people, I think people do remember, even if it's a small seed. But see, what I don't know, which is going to be one of my next questions, is when you're in the dissertation phase and you're in the job market and you're looking to make that transition, should you also still be active in presenting at conferences or going to network associations and networking with people, or should you just be sticking to dissertation and applying for jobs?
Our annual conference in criminology is right when the job market hits, so you kind of have to go if you're on the job market. But if it was at a different point in the year, I might not be saying that.
I think that's true. I think it depends on the timing of the conference and how much synergy there is with participating in the conference and being on the market. So if you're Job talk is a presentation, a portion of a presentation you've submitted for a conference, and you get the conference venue as an opportunity to give it yet another time. That works well, but to have it be a separate, activity to have to do may not be worth the time.
Mm-hmm.
But there are, a number of professional associations have as part of the conference, like, a job sort of session where you might even interview at the conference. So,
For me, that was very helpful. They had like I forget what they called it, like these job market tables, and people were just sitting there, man, and you just walk up and you shake hands, and I got a few calls off of that. I wasn't the hottest person on the market. I mean, I got a little bit of attention, but just going in and saying hi to people at those at the job market table thing got me a lot more calls. So it's uncomfortable as heck. But the good thing is you kind of get your rap down. You kind of get like your job talk or interview mode. You kind of learn what you're going to say by doing more informal stuff like, those sort of table events at a conference.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we don't want to forget Randy's point, though, is that job search is a full-time job.
Yeah.
It is a full-time job, so you're also trying to write a dissertation. So as much synergy between the job search and the conferencing, I think that's a critical point, because there's only so many hours in a day, right? And the perfect job, if you can't finish the dissertation,
Right.
it's not going to wait for you.
And Debbie's point was great. Don't do a side project in that last year when you're doing your dissertation. Absolutely has to be coming from what you're going to be talking about at your job talk.
But it's probably a good idea if you can align the job market search with maybe a national conference that's going on that year to maybe get some visibility and presence out there so people can see some of your skills, your research area, and that could maybe give you a leg up and plant the seeds, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And we're going until 2? No?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think we'll do a little bit open Q&A
Okay.
at 1:30.
Okay. One of the questions that I think about as I'm going through coursework and I'm trying to figure out when I'm writing papers and professors want us to write on some topic, who knows at the time, and then but just writing the paper at the doctoral level just isn't good enough. It seems like our paper should be materializing past the course. And so there should be some type of either developing your research area, or it should be going into maybe a publication or presenting at conferences to kind of flesh out some of the ideas. For attractiveness and making sure that you're competitive on the market, publications. And so we always hear publications are the currency in academia. What advice or what do you all think is a good number of publications or publications in progress when going onto the job markets? And so thinking about dissertation, thinking about that home stretch and being competitive on the job market, you want to go into academia.
Man, it's balanced with those class papers. It can absolutely, you want some of them to develop into publications, but people can go the other way too, where they want every class paper to turn into a publication, and then you're just going way too many directions. And sometimes a class paper is just a class paper, and you just let that die, and you learn something about it and push it to the side, because I've seen people take both routes, and you have to be judicious about what you're going to actually pursue. Mm-hmm. And so when being on hiring committees, I usually like to see a CV. It's not so much the length of it and how many publications, although there's usually a minimum. In my field, it might be 2 to 4 as an ABD person, but I want to see like a coherent body of work. I don't care about publication 8 if it has nothing to do with your dissertation. It just doesn't mean as much. So as you're building your CV, I would urge you to think about coherence and yes, every publication is useful probably, but if you try to go down every road, it's going to stretch you too thin, and it might make for a record that looks kind of all over the place. So put your energies into the 3 or 4 papers or whatever is sort of standard in your field, and try to have those within one or two sort of topic areas.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Departments want to see a program of research. And so, it needs to look programmatic on your CV. You need to be able to articulate your program of research and talk about how different papers you've published fit into that program. And importantly, where are you going next with this program of research? If we hire you, what can we expect that you would be working on as you work toward tenure, for instance? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do encourage students to try to think creatively about how can their class paper be more than a class paper, and but in a particular way. So how does this class relate to your program of research? And if the answer is it doesn't, then there's probably not a good way to factor that in. But if you can think about it in that way, I do think that it's wise to try to get more out of it than just meeting the course requirement.
Jane, have you had any experience with manuscripts and publications just yet?
I have one that's in review. I'm a second author on that one, and then one that I'm a first author on that got published. So I have two. Okay, and then my pilot. I need to write that up. That's one of those ones over there. But to Randy's point, I have about 4 that I did just for class work that are probably just going to hit the shredder at some point in life, just because I don't know what to do with them. They don't fall into that. It would look like I'm scattered because they were papers for the class. I mean, don't you have that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
yes. Yeah. I was just thinking, 2 classes I'm taking this semester. I'm trying to figure out how do I stay in the literature
lane.
In the lane of what I want to do as far as dissertation, but it's not necessarily in the area, and so I'm grappling with, do I just fulfill the requirement and let the paper go, or do I really try to stretch this opportunity to make sure that it's going to materialize past the class, right? And so that's kind of hard sometimes. And so you may end up spending much more time in the literature than actually writing, which will end up you'll end up not making a lot of progress, and so sometimes you do have to kind of let go of the idea, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's hard to have stuff that is dead writing, but maybe you could bring in 4 paragraphs to your dissertation proposal or something too.
Or maybe you now know how to do references in the DOI better. I mean, that's how literally I'm like, okay, I got this.
Or you don't waste 6 months trying to do this paper that you really, not what you're interested in. It's a balance between making more and knowing when to stop.
Yeah.
Random question: doesn't advisors at ODU require students to have certain publications to graduate them? Because I know that many schools do that. I know many schools that they will tell you, okay, you want to graduate with me, you need 5 publications at least on your thesis.
I think it's recommended to publish, but not required. Is that? Did I do that right? Yeah, that's what I got.
I'm not aware of any rule.
I'm not too sure. I'm not the professor either.
Although I will say that we've actually been seeing, even in sociology and in some in public affairs, some of these programs are actually doing away with dissertation. So this is a really interesting trend that I've seen, where instead of writing a dissertation, if you have a sole authored publication in a journal, peer-reviewed, in an acceptable journal, depending on how your program defines it, that is your dissertation and that is your graduation requirement. Sole author. So but I don't know necessarily that there are programs of faculty advisors that will say, you can't be my student because you only have 3 publications.
Yeah, I guess they can make that rule, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not though. Yeah, might want to look in the old handbook.
Oh man, I don't even know if that would be. Is that attractive? Do you think there would be an easier not an easier process, but I guess would that position the student to be more marketable or competitive, maybe?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I think the publications are really important, but for example, if you're a doctoral candidate and you have a sole authored article in American Sociological Review or in Public Administration Review, average faculty haven't published there. So in that sense, you'd be very...
I mean, the act of publishing can be almost, I'm thinking it's painful. And it's gut-wrenching and it's long. So I'm thinking, the revision process and everything, you've really got to... So I could see how that might be to a dissertation.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
First
interesting.
author, huh?
Yes,
Puts a whole new spin on things for Donta.
It does, yeah. I don't think I'll rise to dedication just yet, but we'll think about it. And I was thinking about also with the job market, when you were trying to manage writing the dissertation and applying for jobs, did you all keep like a digital list of where you applied and contacts and kind of like that management process? Like, what was that like for you when you started to get calls back? Just like, oh yeah, did I apply with University of Kentucky? Like, you know, it's like, who is this place? You know, how does that work when you're trying to do dissertation and apply for jobs and managing that?
It's been a really long time for me. Like, we have more digital tools available now than I would have had available. So I'll let someone else
I have
take
an
this.
Excel spreadsheet, and I mean, I'm a very disorganized person, but you cannot. Even I had to resort to the Excel spreadsheet for the job market, and the hard thing is all the letters and the deadlines and staying on your professors to send the letters of rec in. It really is a full-time gig. But yeah, you have to have, and talk to people who in your program who've just graduated. They probably have a Excel spreadsheet or some other system that will work for you and your discipline. But you got to stay on it, man. And there's so many different websites, and
Yeah, when I went on the job market, I only applied at 3 places, so it was simple to manage. But I will say, Pragati here has an amazing spreadsheet that she uses to keep her committee and her referees in check. So I let Pragati speak because she has an Excel spreadsheet that every time she's applying for a new place, she'll email that out to, at least to me, because I'm very scattered. I need update. And she'll tell us when it's due, whether we send it to her, what the website is to upload. So, Pragati, if you want to just talk a little bit about your spreadsheet.
Yeah, please.
Actually, I have a wonderful spreadsheet, but I haven't got any calls so far.
Because you don't know your spreadsheet.
I have been applying, so because I have been, I followed all the rules that you're talking about. I don't know what, but so I'm right from day one, every job that I see, I paste the link for that job and also the link for where I'm actually applying. So there's a job ad URL, and then there's a URL for where you're applying. And then I keep a track of what was the last apply by date, because I inform it to my references as well that they have to upload it by such and such date. So I maintain a column of what university I'm applying to, what is the last apply by date, a URL for their reference if they want to go and check what the job is all about, and who is the person to whom they have to address the
that's
letter
very
to.
helpful.
You need to make that into an app and patent that, and just, right? I mean, really, a gazillionaire.
And then I keep updating whether they have already done it or is it still pending.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm the one that's always pending. That's why I need to.
Yeah, please follow up too. Like, just keep following up. Like nobody I know would be offended, because it's hard. Like, I wrote letters for 4 or 5 people on the job market last year, and did I get the letter of reference in for Eastern Washington University for all 4 of them? I don't know. You try your best, but you're going to miss 1 out of 25. So just keep following up with folks. And it sounds like you got a good system. So yeah.
You're an engineer by any chance? Are you an engineer?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why. I mean, I use a spreadsheet for everything. I even use a spreadsheet to make life decisions. So.
Yeah. Were there any questions so far? No? Pragati, did you want to talk a little bit about just kind of how you've been managing the dissertation and just the application process, even outside of the spreadsheet, just writing and looking at websites and seeing what's going on and seeing uploads and things like that?
Sure. I mean, I agree with him when he said that. I actually, at a very initial stage within a class assignment, when one of my professors suggested that this would be a good dissertation topic, I initially thought that this is what I'm going to do, because it wasn't my interest area, and because she suggested that it could be taken up, so better take it up and then run with it and develop it further, rather than keep on jumping from one topic to another, because that is what I see people pursue a topic topic, they work so hard on it, and then later on they think that something happens, and then they are not interested in it anymore. So I just wanted to pursue with that particular topic itself. And so when I came to, before my comms, I had already done all the literature review, and so at least my first 3 chapters were already ready, but I had a draft model or something before my comms. So as soon as I gave my comms, within next 1 or 2 months, I had sent it to my committee for review, the first 3 chapters, because they were ready with it. So, and I wanted to be, before August, I wanted to have the proposal defended, because I wanted to then concentrate on job applications only. Because I had the same fear that I won't be getting any time to work on my dissertation then once the job market opens. So before, in July, I had defended my proposal because I wanted to be ready for job market. And then August onwards, there were so many applications, so I kept on applying. But at the same time, because I had downloaded most of the data, although I had not arranged it in the Excel format that I wanted, but I had downloaded the main sheet, so I had the download. And then during the fall semester, I just concentrated on arranging the data, and then to make it ready for analysis, basically. And then in December, when there was this break, winter break, I worked on the analysis part. So during the winter break, I analyzed the data as well as wrote the draft, and by January mid, I had sent the first draft full dissertation to my company. So I use basically the breaks that you were talking about. So I followed the rules, but thing is I'm not hearing anything from the job market. I followed all the rules that the professor have talked about.
This August. It's this August. 18 is the year. Right?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
The markets are so different in every discipline.
Yeah.
My question is about doing a postdoc. So, what are the benefits of postdoc, and why should I spend just as much time preparing an application for a postdoc as I would for an academic position?
You can build up your record, maybe take a leap up to the next level of university. I don't know. We don't really have a ton of those in my field. I'm guessing hard sciences. There's more postdocs.
I mean, it's really that comes to science. Like as a physicist, if you don't have at least 3 or 4 products, you will never get a job. It's just how it works. It's very much depends on your field.
And it's a process
For
too,
us,
right? I mean, you're accepted into that program, so it's another kind of badge.
I will say though that postdocs are unique to kind of the engineering. Generally, for the engineering and the sciences, to kind of build that track record. And I will caution though that I also know several postdocs, and we have several here at ODU, for example, that are on their 3rd or 4th postdoc. And that's really not the thing. I mean, it's a stressful way to go longer term. On the other hand, I have one of my former students is doing her postdoc, into her 3rd year of a postdoc at Roitsch, and it's a very prestigious research institute. But it also, she is very interested in doing the research and not as much on the teaching side. So she's really looking for a faculty position at a very research-intensive institution. And so for her, this postdoc is perfect because it gives her time to really do the research to launch her research career without the distractions of teaching. So I think at the end of the day, it's more where do you want to go and how does that postdoc potentially help you?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because there are a lot of different types of postdocs. I did a postdoc immediately after my PhD, but it was an administrative postdoc. So I actually worked on student learning and outcomes assessment and faculty credentialing, which makes me a great administrator now, but it really didn't do much to necessarily launch my research career. But it helped, I think, solidify what I knew kind of were my administrative strengths to couple that with a faculty position. So there are different ways and different opportunities as a postdoc. It just kind of, I think, depends on where you want to go longer term.
It definitely sharpens the point of your focus, though, I would think. Like if you, I won't say pigeonholed, that's a horrible term, but what you choose to do your postdoc in, I think you should be really comfortable that that's probably what you're going to continue on with. Am I right?
For the most part, but I think the other part is, in a lot of cases, if it's postdoc that's funded by a very specific project. So, for example, with NSF, any NSF proposal that you put in that has a postdoc component, you're required to put in a mentoring plan. Some faculty don't always mentor for the mentoring plan, but the idea then is that the postdoc gives you the opportunity to be mentored by a big name in the field, for example, or to be a co-PI or to work on a grant with them that then leverages that skill set for the next path, your next career path. So but I would advise, in terms of thinking about a postdoc, that would be something that you should talk to your advisor about, and it is very disciplined.
I have a question for you. Do you know a little bit more about postdocs? What do you think about doing a postdoc outside of the U.S., like in Europe, for example?
Again, I think that's very discipline specific. If there are some very well-renowned institutes that would, like if you're doing energy research, a postdoc at CERN. I mean, there's nothing that would be comparable here in the U.S. So I think again, it goes back to how does it help you.
What about having if my research is actually either because that's what I want to do my research on, what I want to work. How do you feel about like doing my PhD in Europe and trying to get a job with a PhD from Europe in the US? Is that easy, hard? Because from my understanding, the PhD in Europe is research based. They don't really care about classes as much as they do in the US.
PhDs in Europe and Australia generally do not have any coursework.
Right.
It's purely research based. I honestly don't know the answer to that. We have faculty here at the university that have PhDs from Europe, from Australia, but I don't know kind of how that sets them up differently. I actually have I've been working with a postdoc here who did his PhD in Australia. And one of the struggles that he has is he's not prepared for the teaching side of a faculty position. He was purely in the lab from day one of his PhD program. And he completed a dissertation, strong research, and is now doing a postdoc and trying to find some teaching experience while he's doing his postdoc simultaneously, trying to teach in the chemistry department here because he doesn't have any teaching experience whatsoever.
And if you're an international student, I would guess that if you're done with your coursework and you go outside for a postdoc or something, and I will have fear of even getting past the integration after that 2 years. So
I got you.
Yeah.
So we're getting closer to the 1:30 mark before we start to do the question and answer. But we didn't talk a lot about teaching in that last stretch, and so for a lot of programs, there's teaching opportunities to kind of build up the experience with class management and developing a course and a syllabus and things like that. When you're in the stretch of finishing your program and you have not taught just yet, and you want to teach, are there things that you can do that can maybe make yourself more marketable, or do you just have to put yourself in the classroom?
Gosh, it's having some teaching experience is really beneficial. So, like having none, that's not good. Having taught your own class is probably, at least one class as instructor of record. Mm-hmm. That's great. But there's some middle ground there too, like serving as a teaching assistant where you ran your own lab section. So you were really in charge of that classroom. I've even seen students who haven't had teaching experience build their teaching component of their CV through giving guest lectures and getting some student evaluations based on that guest lecture. So I wouldn't neglect that piece, but if you're working on your dissertation and applying for jobs and you don't have that yet, you might have to do some satisficing rather than
That's what I
taking on your own class at that stage.
Okay. Okay. What about you?
Well, in our department, our PhD students, and there's a couple of them in here, they teach almost right away. So my focus is always, how can we get you to not teach so much? 'Cause they they have a too much teaching experience sometimes. Not too much, but they're instructor of record on 2 or 3 preps. It really depends what sort of academic job you want. Because I always am like, as a graduate student, be selfish of your time. Like, you don't need a bunch of preps. However, I've seen with some of my students who've gone on the market, that's really helped them. If they're going to a teaching school that needs them to cover all, a wide range of the curriculum in criminal justice, if they've taught 5 classes, 4 different preps, they're going to get that job because they're going to fill that need. So it really depends what sort of, if you're going to the academic job market, like what sort of institution you want to land in. If you're going to a research place, or you want to be in a research place, you think you're qualified for it, they're not going to care so much at all. Maybe being a TA or having 1 class is helpful, but if you're going to go to a teaching place, you will need a teaching portfolio in my discipline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Jen, you're teaching right now.
Mm-hmm.
4 classes?
No, I have 2 classes.
2 classes.
Yeah, 2 classes now.
2 classes.
1 section of 2 and then a night class. So, and I've taught throughout, but I enjoy teaching. I really do. I get a kick out of it. And I've also, for me personally, it helped me because a lot of the undergraduates I have are now in the graduate program, and my research is looking at these graduate students. So I know a lot of them, and therefore recruitment of subjects is a little bit easier. And I also think you get to know the inner workings of the department when you teach, and you get to see kind of, I won't say behind the scenes, but you guys know what I mean, behind the scenes. I mean, even just as an adjunct instructor, I think it's experience that you can't really, put value on because it's just, I don't know, it's just something tangible that you're involved in a process that helps you realize what goes on to make things work. If that makes sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So were you teaching when you were also taking courses?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole time, yeah.
And so as managing teaching while taking courses and teaching while doing dissertation different?
Oh, wow. Okay. It's different in that it's nice to not have every night of the week that I'm here, like 4 to 7 o'clock, 4:20 to 7. But it's, again, you have to be really structured and not just go, I don't teach tonight, or I don't have class tonight. So it's different, but it's still busy, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm.
Yeah. But like I said, I get a lot of pleasure out of teaching. I really enjoy it. And that's what drives me. And because my research is on how these students think and how students think, it gives me more like, I got to write that. I see that, like I got to find out more stuff about that. So that passion that, Debbie talked to along when we first started today, it helps infuse that and keep me kind of going toward it. So.
Okay. So we are at actually 1:30 exactly. And so we wanted to give an opportunity for questions from the audience. If you haven't asked anything thus far, if you were curious about something, wanted to run an idea, before we wrap up the program. So were there any lingering questions, things that you want clarification on?
And
Yes.
this is more a question I'm asking on behalf of the students. I think one of the big struggles sometimes, and we're acknowledging it more and more, are kind of the mental struggles that sometimes you run into as a doctoral student when you're trying to balance work life and you've got a dissertation and you're looking for a job and you're uncertain about funding. What advice would you have for graduate students that are kind of struggling, just feeling like they can barely make it through? Because I had that moment, but I also kind of lucked out in the sense that, when I was in grad school, I always had drinking, but we always, all it said was, I need a drink day, and it's like you had 5 other people who said, let's go. But sometimes when you're not taking coursework, and particularly in the program that I teach in, we have a lot of part-time students, so you don't really have that strong body, of a cohort of people that you can call on to say, help, boost me, help me, walk me off the ledge, kind of thing. So, what advice would you have for students who are kind of going through those struggles?
one thing that was helpful for me is I had a writing project with another student, and so we could get beers and work on papers, and it wasn't just getting beers. We could also discuss ideas. So that was helpful. So I had him the whole time. And if you're really struggling, I mean, ask for help, obviously, because there's those stories too, and it's a very, very stressful time, economically and personally and professionally, and do know that it's worth it. Like once you get to the other side, I mean, I reminisce about grad school, but I would never just, getting a real check is fantastic. Like a real check, for those of you who don't have careers already, it's really great to have a real check.
But that's actually a good point. I think the students need to know that some of us have kind of had those moments that, we're available, we ask for help. If we're not the right people to help, we can probably figure out other resources at the university to help. But we've been there too. It might, you might look like, hey, it wasn't an issue, but I think we've all gone through those moments. So.
Yeah. And if it's really serious, like I had a friend 2 cohorts behind me. She took her own life, and like it was a lot of things, but part of it was the stress of grad school. So like, if anybody's really feeling overwhelmed, like, go talk to somebody.
That was actually another reason I chose the dissertation chair whom I chose, because she disclosed that she was like, there were parts where there were like pockets of just darkness, and she just said, I had some people who didn't believe in what I was doing and had other people who were just kind of, and I thought, that's relatable. Thanks for that, because you'll get it when I come in, like, making 3 tracks in the snow, like all tired and everything. Or you'll get it when I'm like so excited and you need to reel me in a little bit, right? I want somebody who's been there, done that, and willing to not kind of talk down from the mountain, instead just kind of go through it with me, right? So it sounds like yours, Randy, like your chair was like that too, where it's like, you know what, we got this, we're going, we're getting it done. Yeah, so I think that's, just that relatability is huge.
What about, how you work? Like, for you, if someone telling you you're doing it right is not helping you. And your advisor is like, you need someone who tells you suck. Because literally, that's just how my brain works. If you tell me you're doing well, I'm going nowhere. So my advisor is the other way around. Is that okay to tell my advisor, look, can you be harder on me, please?
Sure.
Is that okay? Is that too offensive to say?
I don't know about harder. I've had folks who we've talked and I give them deadlines. It's not my style, but if the deadlines are helpful, then okay, we will do that. But if it's that far off in terms of working relationship, then you can't ask them to be an actor or something.
Get a bad cop and a good cop on your committee, right? You gotta have both, right?
Yeah, that's a good.
Do you like the criminology reference there?
I like that. I like that.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, you can get 20 extra minutes that you were planning on having. So go back to the office of work.
All right, thank you guys for being here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for coming out.